A wealth of beautiful knotwork designs exist in the ancient Celtic manuscripts. Today I'll show you how to recreate a border design from the Book of Durrow. Coming right up. Hello everyone, I'm Carrie Buziak of AON Celtic Art. I'm a published author and a Celtic artist teaching modern techniques in ancient art. I've been teaching this method for the last 25 years for my website, as well as in my book, Creating Celtic Knotwork by Dover Publications. Before we get started today, make sure you subscribe to my channel and ring that bell below so you're kept up to date on new tutorials when they're released. Today we'll be working from the Book of Durrow, which is one of the big three Celtic manuscripts. There's the Book of Durrow, the Lindisfarne Gospels, and of course the famous Book of Kells. The Book of Durrow is great for seeing very strong patterns and designs. The Book of Kells has some beautiful pages, but often they're very finely detailed and sometimes it's a little hard to make out what's going on. So the Book of Durrow is a great place to start, and that's what we're going to do today. We'll be working on folio 124 verso. We'll be using the AON dot paper today, and I'll put the link to that in the comments below. So go download a copy and let's get started. To begin, let's start with some terminology. MS is the shorthand version for manuscript. Folio means a page. Verso refers to the left-hand pages, and recto means the right. And the easy way to remember that is recto has an R, the same as right. Recto, right. So here's the page that we'll be working on today. Book of Durrow, folio 124 verso. And we're going to do that left-hand border of knots. Here's a close-up of that knot. In our other tutorials, we started with the grid pattern, added some walls, and that resulted in a design. To work backwards, where we're starting with the finished pattern and trying to figure out the grid or walls that would have been used to make it, you have to identify the areas that were changed. Changes to the pattern will show where walls were placed to create the design. So look at these two corner patterns. The left-hand corner has no walls, so this is how the weave would go with nothing to alter it. The right-hand pattern does have walls added, and that's what caused a break or a change in the design. You can see here it changed 3 times, once in the upright column, once in the corner, and then again on the bottom. Now let's examine the border. We can see this same segment repeating down the border. So the yellow part, and then it flips, and then you have the red part, and then it flips down again to the yellow, and then up to the red, and on and on. Like those corner examples, we're going to look for areas in this pattern that change, because that would indicate walls have been added. We can see in between the red and yellow, there's sort of a Z or zigzag design that splits the pattern. So basically something was introduced that interrupted the pattern and made it change. There's another area that was changed as well. You can see this on the bottom where it's circled. The indicator to this is the long strand. You can see how it's longer than the other strands around it, so something else happened there to make that one be so much longer. So a good indicator of where walls have been added to the pattern are where you can see background showing through. So you can see the Z pattern here between the red and the yellow, and you can see along the bottom as well by that long strand that there must be another wall there too. So we've examined the design and we found some places where the pattern has been broken or interrupted. Those would be where our walls go. So I can drop in that Z-shaped wall on one side between the red and the yellow segments, and on the other side as well. And on the bottom where we know there must be a wall making that extra long red strand that we noticed earlier. So now we know what makes up each segment, and we can repeat that along the design, flipping it up and down as we go to fill the whole border. I'll enlarge the one segment so we can see what's going on a little more easily here. So now we figured out our walls. What else do we know about knots that we can use to figure out this design? Well, we know that everywhere there is a small dot, there's going to be an intersection where 2 strands cross over. So as we see up on the top here, where these 2 red strands cross, there must be a small dot. I'll show my small dots here in a pale blue just so you can see them more easily against the background. And I'll put small dots on top of all the other intersections as well. What else do we know about our knots? We know that the big dots sit on the background area in between the knotwork lines. So everywhere that we see background above in the design, we can add a big dot, which I'll show in dark blue here so you can see it. And I'll add the rest of my big dots to the design. We also know that at each end and each change of direction of the walls, there must be a big dot because of the rule big dot to big dot when we make our walls. So I can add those big dots to our walls as well. Now I'll just drag those dots off of the background there so we can see what's going on a little more easily. Up below, I'll change our dot colors to our usual colors of dark and light gray, just so it looks a little more familiar. So now we can see the final pattern for that repeating segment. We can see that it's 4 big dots across on the top, 3 big dots high on the side, and 6 big dots wide on the bottom. With that in mind, we could recreate this on our own grid paper by following the same pattern. 4 big dots across, 3 big dots high on the side, and 6 big dots wide on the bottom. From there, we just have to add the repeat to it, remembering to flip it up and down as we go so it's an alternating pattern. I'll add our top and bottom boundary box to that, and from there we start building the knot just like we always would. Around every small gray dot, we're going to add a tipped over tic-tac-toe pattern. When those are all on, we'll next add the corners everywhere that it points into the little armpit of those Z shapes. With the corners on, next we add the elbows or the bends, joining up the remaining free lines. Next, the weaving. I'm going to choose that top leftmost intersection to begin with, so I erase it in one direction. The arrow shows the way I'm going to follow that strand as I continue erasing, going over, then under, then over the next strand, and continuing until the knot is all finished. So you can see we've recreated that border pattern. Ours is a little taller because we used a perfect grid, whereas they didn't have that, so theirs is a little more compressed up and down, but it's the same pattern that we've reproduced. By identifying where the walls must be based on how the pattern is broken or changed, knowing that small dots have to occur where there's intersections of 2 strands crossing over each other, and knowing that the big dots are on the background, we're able to remake it. As usual, I've made a worksheet to share with you guys. It has both this pattern for your reference as well as a variation on it that you can try. And don't forget that these and many more techniques are covered in my book, Creating Celtic Knotwork by Dover Publications. So that's how you can break down a manuscript design and recreate it using our grid technique. It's a little bit tricky to wrap your brain around, so don't worry if your head exploded during this episode. We'll do some more in the future so you get some practice in. There are definitely better knots and worse knots to try to morph into our grid technique. The other way to do it is to freehand them, and we'll cover that in future episodes. I just wanted to go over this with you so you can see how you would do it if you wanted to give it a shot. It's another tool for your tool belt, if you will. Again, if you run into trouble, please leave a note in the comments below and I'll try and answer as best I can. And don't forget to subscribe to my channel so you're kept up to date on new episodes when they're released. And please consider supporting my channel and my website by signing up as a patron. Patrons get all sorts of perks such as free high-res clip art, desktop wallpaper, and other cool things, so check it out. I have a whole bunch of different tiers. I'll leave the links in the comments below. Thanks so much, everybody. Bye!